Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this August 29th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can listen to my show every evening, 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's on First Amendment Pacific Time. You can also get it at 11 a.m. Pacific Time. And if you can't go there, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going back over a decade regarding what has been called the Vatican-led New World Order. And today is part 10 of what I call the greatest off-Broadway stage play ever produced in the history of mankind, that being the Presidential Elections 2016. Now, this is an ongoing production that's been going on in our country ever since its formation. And the play goes even farther than that. And I've tried to show you that the narrative they are giving in this play is scripted. And what I mean by that, when you're watching everything you're seeing regarding these elections, it's all staged. And the script has already been written. Much of it written prior to, I can even show you certain plots they're using in this play that were written hundreds of years ago. But no one's going to deny it's very deceptive, it's very catchy. They use everything in their play. They have wars, they have sex and violence. Boy, I'll tell you, if you just looked at all this shadowy stuff they do to take away from really a narrative that would be so much more truthful, it would be unbelievable. But the characters that they put in, you see, this whole thing, and I've explained before, just reads like a Hollywood movie. First of all, you have the producers, the money people. We've tried to show who those are, the Vatican being a very, very instrumental portion of this. Then we tried to show you who are the writers of this great stage play. And we've showed you that they are the Jesuit order. They are known as the great educators, the great writers. We've shown you how Jesuit theater began back in the 1500s and how they've been very, very good at putting together a plot that has kind of passed on through the centuries to reach one final ending: a one world government, a one world order, a one world religion, a one world everything. Everything kind of meshing together in this kind of false unity they're presenting to us. So I've tried to show you that. Now, before we get into, I promised a while back to show you that these writers go so far back they even use the Bible to change everything. And I've showed you that the people that have tried, you see, when you're working in Hollywood as a writer, you try to get your stuff into the movies, right? And that's what many people have tried to do when the subject comes up on, well, how come we never talk about the truth of who's really destroying Christianity? Why don't we talk about the truth about the Protestant Reformation? Why don't we talk about who's really behind the puppets in this play? You know, in this particular instance, we have Clinton, Trump, and Obama playing the main characters. And I said, well, why don't we ever get the real story about who are the puppets? Why don't they talk about the truth? Why don't they do that? And the point is, they are very selective on what they put in their show. They don't want to destroy what they have working for hundreds of years. And so as we sit here today, we are very close, many say, to this kind of one world order, one world religion coming into fruition. And I don't think anyone can deny it if you look at what's really going on today. So I said the other, maybe this was in part 3 or 4, and I didn't get around to it, but I want to do that today. Here's the deal. When you look at these writers, first of all, they don't, when you watch a movie, at the end of the movie, you always see, the credits, and the writers take credit for what they've done, producers as well, directors. We know who the actors are in this play, but none of the people that have really put it together want to take credit. They're such humble people, aren't they? Well, I want to give them credit for it. I want to give them credit for creating one of the most crazy fantasy movies in the history of mankind, and then meshing it together with reality. They've brought fantasy and reality together where you really don't know which one is which. It's masterful. And I think they should take credit. So I've given the Vatican credit for being one of the main producers, and I've given the Jesuit order their due credit for creating this kind of satanic movie that is so interesting. And I might add, before I get to this, in one of the parts coming up, I'm going to show you how they use sex and all these different things to get your head away from the real truth that's going on behind the scenes. And as we speak today, they do the same thing. But anyway, we'll get to that. Joan Rivers' story is an interesting one. We'll get to her. And a few other things regarding the Clinton couple. Very, very interesting story behind the scenes. But anyway, that's just to divert you. I don't want to do that today. What I want to do is show you that these writers use the Bible as basically one of their main books. Now, some may say this isn't true, but I think the Bible's the true Word of God. And all books after that, basically, many of them, even the Quran, I believe, was written by these Jesuit writers. And well, maybe not the Jesuits, they weren't even around then, but the Vatican. Jesuits in name, I mean, same kind of philosophy existed back in the 600s, 700s. And we will do a show, and I think the show today will kind of touch on that as well. But here's the deal. I said we got to go back. They've changed what God's plan is in the Bible to fit their own deceptive needs using Satan and Lucifer. And I said to you that I tried to explain how this all works. And I did it in my way. And today I found probably the best version of this by a man by the name of Walter Weith, who I've used before. And go to some of his videos. When you want to talk about geopolitical intersecting with the Vatican, he does a fantastic job on that. So I'm going to play that. He calls this all together now, 1, 2, 3. And it'll show you how these great Jesuit writers who are writing this great presidential election stage play use the Bible, twist it, reverse it, and basically take away God's plan right from the beginning. And you'll see that in the political philosophies that are coming out today in this play that you see right in front of your eyes. So when we talk about this kind of gay marriage being acceptable, transgenders, all this kind of stuff, we're seeing it's a switch of what God really said in Genesis. And I think Walter brings that up. So I wanted to play most of what he presented in a little presentation called All Together Now, 1, 2, 3. And we'll see if we can get to most of it today. But it's well worth the time. As I said, these writers are very shrewd, and I wanted to give them credit in how they twist and turn and use the Bible, so you really don't know what God's plan is anymore. That's how they started this thing, and they had to go way back to the beginning of time. And let's go and listen to Walter Weith tell us how these great Jesuit writers have done this. And when I say great, that's in quotes, of course. Here we go. Here we go. Let me see if I can get this for you. Here we go.
Genesis 1 verse 27. And so God created man in his own image. In the image of God created he him, male and female created he them. And God blessed them, and God said unto them, Be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth and subdue it and have dominion over the fish of the sea and over the fowl of the air and over every living thing that moves upon the earth. And the Lord God commanded the man, saying, Of every green tree that thou mayest freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil thou shalt not eat of it, for in the day that thou eatest thereof thou shalt surely die. So there are a few things that God inaugurated in Eden. Firstly, he created them male and female. But the rules and the covenant were transferred to Adam before Eve was even there. Adam received dominion before Eve was even created. Gave names to all the animals. And the covenant was with man and was to be transferred to everything that is in the sphere of power that God had created. And the woman was flesh of his flesh and bone of his bone. They were to be as one, but there was a hierarchy. In Genesis chapter 8, verse 18, and Noah went forth, and his sons, and his wife, and his sons' wives with him. And I like the way Randy Skeet explained this situation. When it came to the redemption in the ark, the wives are mentioned as many times as the men are mentioned. But when it comes to the covenant, it is always with the men. And what he did before the flood, he repeated after the flood. Genesis 9 verse 1, and God blessed Noah and his sons, and said unto them, be fruitful and multiply, and replenish the earth. And God spake unto Noah and to his sons with him, saying, and behold, I establish my covenant with you, and with your seed after you. It doesn't say there with Noah and his son and his wives. They were there by implication because they were bone of his bone and flesh of his flesh. But the covenant was something that was handed down in a hierarchical system that God had set up. And it was called the patriarchal system, and it's not very favorably viewed in the days that we live in. Now, it wasn't because the women were not capable. It wasn't that they weren't spiritual enough. None of those criteria mattered. It was simply a hierarchy that God had set in place, as he has with the angelic host as well. And even in the Godhead, there's God the Father, there's God the Son, and then you had various categories of angels. 1 Corinthians 11 verse 3 said, I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of the woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God. So there is a hierarchy in the Bible. If we go to Genesis, God established his covenant through the man, and he gave dominion, and the earth was subject to man. And he created them male and female, and he said that through this union he would share his creative capacity with humanity. Now, there was something else that was also instituted in Eden. Genesis chapter 2 verse 24, therefore shall a man leave his father and his mother, and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So the marriage union, the covenant, the earth, dominion over the earth, and the Sabbath, all were instituted in Eden. And they set the tone for the entire existence of mankind. Now, do you think that the devil would hate everything that was instituted in Eden? And as the master of reversal, he would want to take the whole plan and reverse it and set it up in a different fashion. And before he can set up his kingdom, he must be able to do this. And it must incorporate not only the physical aspects, it must incorporate also the spiritual aspects. Because his kingdom is not only a physical, it's also a spiritual kingdom. So, if God instituted the marriage, and God instituted dominion over the earth, and when all these things had been done, he instituted the Sabbath of rest to rest in the completed works of God. In other words, the Sabbath really stands for righteousness by faith, because there's nothing I can add to the creation, and there's nothing I can add to the eventual recreation after the fall of man. It's a complete work that God did and not man. So the Sabbath becomes the symbol of rest. So what God has instituted, Satan will want to negate. He will want to negate the dominion. He will want to negate the institution of marriage. He will want to negate the Sabbath. And then he will have set up a kingdom in counterfeit to this kingdom. Now in Daniel, we read about the kingdoms as they will arise upon the earth, and each kingdom had its opportunity and then was replaced by another kingdom. I've had this statue modified slightly.
Okay, and I wanted to interject something here. The writers of this stage play, as you can see, have taken the side of Satan, negating God's plan. So anytime someone wants to write in their version, for example, let's change it. Can't we get our story in regarding the plan God had? And that's the reason that we don't like to see everything that you're writing equal what Satan's writing for. So the writers here seem to be working for Satan, don't they? Back to Walter Veith.
Because whenever you look at the statue in the books, he's always standing with his legs nicely together. And I didn't like that, so I had one made where you spread the legs. Because one of the feet is sitting in Rome, but if you go to the Roman Empire, it also had a seat in the east, in Constantinople. And this kingdom is a universal kingdom, so it saddles the whole earth. And he's firmly entrenched not only in the east, but also in the west. But in the 10 toes are epitomized the Roman Empire in its western form, which will eventually control through its norms and its standards the entire world. Now, who came out of that Western European empire? Is it just Europe? Or is it the countries associated with Europe? What about the United States of America? Isn't it settled largely with Europeans, or wasn't it originally when the constitutions were framed? What about Southern Africa? What about Australia and New Zealand? So that's the one aspect, and then you have the other aspect, the eastern component. And the feet are made of iron and clay. Now, if we read in the Spirit of Prophecy, it says there, iron and clay is the mingling of churchcraft and statecraft. We have to read this carefully. We've come to a time when God's sacred work is represented by the feet of the image in which the iron was mixed with the miry clay. God has a people, a chosen people, whose discernment must be sanctified, who must not become unholy by laying upon the foundation wood, hay, and stubble. So there's something that we have to do that's different to what the world does. Every soul who is loyal to the commandments of God will see that the distinguishing feature of our faith is the seventh-day Sabbath. If the government would honor the Sabbath as God has commanded, it would stand in the strength of God in defense of the faith once delivered to the saints. But statesmen will uphold the spurious Sabbath and will mingle their religious faith with the observance of this child of the papacy, placing it above the Sabbath which the Lord has sanctified and blessed, setting it apart for man to keep holy, as a sign between him and his people to 1,000 generations. The mingling of churchcraft and statecraft is represented by the iron and the clay. Now, so often we want to say that the clay are the weak elements of the political systems and the iron are the strong parts, but this is not what the Bible really teaches, nor what the Spirit of Prophecy says. The clay is churchcraft, The iron is statecraft. And the two are constantly trying to work together to set up a counterfeit kingdom. But they will not cleave, except for a brief moment at the end when everybody gives their power unto the system. This investing the church with the power of the state will bring evil results. Men have almost passed the point of God's forbearance. They have invested their strength in politics and have united with the papacy. But the time will come when God will punish those who have made void his law, and their evil work will recoil upon themselves. So how close are we to this togetherness, this final push? And what is the ideology that will finally bring it about? Well, in the book Education we read, at the same time anarchy is seeking to sweep away all law. Not only divine, but human. The centralizing of wealth and power, one aspect. The vast combinations for the enriching of the few at the expense of the many. The combination of the poorer classes for the defense of their interests and claims. The spirit of unrest, of riot and bloodshed. The worldwide dissemination, and this is interesting, of the same teachings that led to the French Revolution are all tending to involve the whole world in a struggle similar to that which convulsed France. Now, do we have all of these in the world today? Do we have the centralization of wealth and power? Yes. But who did the wealth and power centralization? Do we have combinations for the enriching of the few against the many? Yes. Do we have combinations of poorer classes to defend their interests in the form of trade unions, etc.? Yes, we do. Do we have a spirit of unrest? You only have to look at the news. Do we have riots? Do we have bloodshed? And do we have the same teachings as we had during the French Revolution? And the answer is yes, to every single one of them. In fact, Condoleezza Rice said that even the Bush administration's main task was to complete the work of the French Revolution. Now, we're living in a cataclysmic time. Now, whether these are acts of demonic powers or whether these are planned is irrelevant. The fact of the matter is that a Hegelian dialectic is being used to channel the mindset of man in a particular direction. As the Masonic fraternity says, ordo ab chaos. Out of the chaos, you create the order that you want. But in order to get people to have the same mindset, you must first channel them through the chaos. So it's not only in the Western world that we see catastrophes, we see it in the Eastern world as well. Bombing that killed more than 200, deadliest attack in Baghdad in years.
Okay, we're going to take a break here right now and come back again in the second half hour with Walter Weiss and talk about this. It's amazing when you look at these writers, these Jesuits who are actually writing this script for us. They go all the way back to the beginning of Genesis. And as you work your way through the Roman Empire and how now they're using Islam against Christianity just as they did in the past. Boy, I'll tell you, I can't wait for the second half hour. So come back and listen to the Investigative Journal back in 3 minutes on FirstAmendmentRadio.com.
The book of Revelation says, the spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ. This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy Reality News app. Get it now.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. If some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening. Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity, invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour, and let's get right back to Walter Veith, because he's really showing us how these Jesuit writers script out this great stage play we call the presidential elections, and how they've done it in the past. So here's Walter Veith again.
No morality left, no feeling for humanity. Life is meaningless. People will kill for anything. Just this week, 84 killed in France after the truck plows through the crowd celebrating Bastille Day. I found that rather fascinating, that it was on Bastille Day when this happened, and it celebrates, of course, the French Revolution. And what about the killings of all those people that attended the concert in France just a short while before this latest catastrophe? Band playing Kiss the Devil at Paris terrorist attack. Eagles of Death metal addresses tragedy for the first time. So while they was playing the Eagles of Death, this song, Kiss the Devil, the gunmen plowed down some of the guests. Orlando gay nightclub shooting, 50 killed. Suspect is Omar Mateen. And the world is in turmoil. It doesn't know which way to turn. Some people say, oh, these are the judgments of God. Some people are saying, is this the world gone mad? Religious protesters result in the band Rotting Christ changing their name for their South African gig, which took place this month. This band travels the world, and they are on an international tour to make sure that everybody understands whose side they're on. Now, the very name was so repulsive that they had to change it for the South African gigs. But their name is Rotting Christ. What does that say? It's a Greek band. And what they are saying is that Christ was never resurrected. This is wishful thinking by the devil. And every person who watches the media and sees what is going on must realize that the world cannot continue as it continues. And everybody wants a way out. We want a way out of gender violence. We want a way out of racial violence. We want a way out of religious violence. Can't we just come together and stop this insanity? And the greater the insanity, the greater the need to come together. Isn't this exactly what the devil wants to do? Isn't this a brilliant plot? If you look at this picture on one of their albums of these terrible demonic figures, and they have the words there, kataton, imona, whatever, meaning literally to follow your own demon. In other words, to follow the spirit that leads you, the demonic force that leads you. The world is heading towards a precipice, and these obscene activities taking place in the world, and this senseless violence is channeling the thinking Christian, religious, whatever religion, minded person in a particular direction. And that direction is unity. So we have to come together. We have to stop this insanity. And when those policemen were killed in the United States, Obama defends the Black Lives Matter protests at Police Memorial in Dallas. And some people criticized him and said he spurned the fire, and he actually supported some of the violence in this way. So he was heavily criticized, but the matter is, in fact, in the media, there is racial divide, not only in the United States of America, but in every nation on this planet. And the media says it fell to former President George W. Bush, a resident of Dallas, to provide a less political message that focused on unifying the country out of grief. And I'm surprised at his speech, because he was not so well known for his oratory skills, but he did something quite marvelous here. Mr. Bush said the nation is proud of the slain officers, and then he praised them for their duties that they had done. And then he said, referring to racial divisions roiling the country, Mr. Bush said, Americans must work at finding our better selves. Too often we judge other groups by their worst examples while judging ourselves by our best intentions. Mr. Bush said, at our best, we know we have one country, one future, one destiny. We recognize that we are brothers and sisters sharing the same brief moment on earth. We do not want the unity of grief, nor do we want the unity of fear. We want the unity of hope, affection, and high purpose. I think it's a good speech. I think every person on this planet longs for this high purpose. People are sick and tired of violence. They're sick and tired of fear. They're sick and tired of grief. Obama gay marriage legacy. White House lit up with rainbow after same-sex marriage ruling. So the nation celebrated when he brought in this ruling, and the cartoonists had quite a bit of fun. They said, well, if you look at the legacy of JFK, then it was one small step for man, pointing to the moon landing and what he had achieved in his tenure. And Obama, they have one giant leap for mankind where they have the transvestite sneaking out of the woman's restroom. And they ask, is this the legacy? Well, what did this legislation actually do? Which legislation did it negate? It negated what God had put in place in Eden. So God had said, He created them, male and female. They shall become one flesh. The man shall cleave unto his wife. And this was a covenant before God. This has been reduced to a judicial agreement which can be annulled at any time. The South African courts actually went further and ensured that there could be no recourse in the case of a divorce against one or the other party, because everybody is totally free to choose whomsoever they wish. Now, in the past, if someone destroyed your marriage and you had tremendous financial implications, you could sue the other party. No longer, because it is only a legal agreement in the context of a material sense for the time in which they are together. It's no longer a binding contract before God. So the marriage has been annulled via this legislation. Now, this happened in the United States and in most other countries as well. But this person says, why Obama will go down as one of the greatest presidents of all times. So this is a news commentator. And he has some interesting things to say. It's saying maybe hard to imagine now, but in the face of rising chaos, we'll crave unity all the more. And in future years, whoever can speak most convincingly of unity will rise to the top. It's also hard to imagine many beating Obama at the game. This year's carnival election with Trump as a kind of debauched circus barker only makes the distinction clearer. The absurdity and car crash spectacle of it all have already lent Obama an out and out of time quality, as if he were a creature from another loftier century. Whatever happens next, I feel this in my bones. We'll look back at history, hopefully when we're zooming down the Barack Obama Hyperloop transport system, and think, that man was rare, and we were damn lucky to have him. Interesting statement. The Jesuit Père Teilhard de Chardin said, driven by the forces of love, the fragments of the world seek each other so that the world may come to be. So you first fragment the world with chaos and disorder, and then you pick up the fragments in people who crave nothing more than unity. He also said the outcome of the world, the gates of the future, the entry into the superhuman, these are not thrown open to a few of the privileged, nor to one chosen people to the exclusion of all others. They will open only to an advance of all together, in a direction in which all together can join and find completion in a spiritual renovation of the earth. The world has to come together. This chaos has to stop. This pain, this grief has to end. And then you have these two interesting characters, sparring continuously in the media, vying for the most powerful position in the political sphere. And they don't have very nice things to say about each other, but of course they are actually friends. They visit each other at their homes, they play golf together, they party together, they laugh together. They're house friends. You can look it up on the web. It's very interesting. There are many, many pictures. But there's an interesting contrast that is being portrayed. The one contrast is, let's become inclusive, let's find space for one another, and let's take care of the marginalized. And the other one is, let's build walls, let's separate, let's, etc. And these two ideologies are facing each other squarely in this election. And then you have in the mix a man like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders heads to the Vatican for a conference. Sanders said in an interview with Associated Press that he was appreciative and proud to be invited to the conference organized by the Pontifical Academy of Social Sciences, and that he has long admired the teachings of Pope Francis. Now, Bernie Sanders is a Jew, but he likes Pope Francis. He will join several speakers commemorating the 25th anniversary of Centesimus Annus, a high-level teaching document by Pope John Paul II on the economy and social justice at the end of the Cold War. The theme from the conference, which is essentially how we create a moral economy, is one that has occupied my attention for decades, and the teachings from Pope Francis have moved me very much, said the Senate. So the ideology that he wants to bring into government is a papal ideology of social justice, which in many lectures which I've given before have been shown to be totally contrary to every tenet of the Word of God. But this is what the world is crying out for, because there is so much social injustice. First you create it, and then you use it to get the iron and the clay to cleave together. Because if churchcraft and statecraft don't come together to do this together, the world will never see it. It's interesting that he kept on with his campaign even though he was far behind and could no longer win the presidential race. Yet he continued to the very last moment, and his reason that he gave was to make sure that the ideologies that he stood for would be implemented in the party, the Democratic Party, no matter who ran. And when that was accomplished, he finally endorsed Hillary Clinton. So Hillary Clinton is probably the best candidate for the next presidency of the United States. Although if the other one wins, it doesn't really matter, because they are cut from the same cloth, they're even from the same family, the same royal family, so they have the right bloodlines to be president, whether they are Trumps or whether they are Clintons. It doesn't really matter. But the ideology is important. And then we've seen some very interesting history which sort of shook many people's pockets, even small people's pockets, the so-called Brexit. And I heard so many of our own people saying, well, this is the final falling apart of the iron and the clay, and people are coming to their senses and moving away from the New World Order. But there's something wrong here, because prophecy says the kings of the world will give their power unto the beast. So what was Brexit all about? And why should Britain separate itself when Ireland does not separate itself, when Scotland wants to secede maybe and even go to the European Union? Why is it essential that Britain should be separate from the European Union?
Now, remember a week or two ago I mentioned the same thing, and Walter Veith is on the same track, because I was thinking the reason most people were saying Brexit was a pull away from the New World Order, and I said no, it's a pull towards the beast. And let's listen to what Walter Veith has to say about that.
Well, I don't know if any of you have seen a previous video of mine called The Beamable Sustainable Princes, which deals with the history of Britain and the Reformation, and how eventually the Reformation capitulated to the papal power, and Britain is actually a crown territory, which means that it's subject legally by documentation to Rome and no one else. What does this mean? Well, let's have a look at the outgoing Prime Minister. Cameron's legacy, How will you remember him? We've looked at Obama's. David Hassel in Birmingham believes David Cameron will always be remembered first and foremost as the Prime Minister who held a referendum about Britain's membership in the EU. He'll be remembered as the Prime Minister who bet the future of the country on a referendum, the real aim of which was to sort out Eurosceptics within his own party. He lost that bet and as a result forced the country out of the EU, possibly leading to the eventual breakup of the UK itself. That's not a legacy to be proud of, says the media. Is it, or was it planned? What's the other legacy? Johnny Thompson in Cardiff believes David Cameron should be praised for introducing gay marriage. As the member of the lesbian, gay, etc. community, I'll always remember David Cameron as the Prime Minister who finally introduced gay marriage into the United Kingdom. His social policies in modernizing the Conservative Party and protecting vulnerable minority groups such as my own is a feature of his premiership which I hope is not forgotten. Mr. Cameron essentially made me proud not only to be British but proud to be myself. That is invaluable. He writes, he legalized gay marriage, but it wasn't even in the Tory manifesto and against the wishes of many of his own MPs. Why is it so important that this legislation should be introduced in the entire world? Now, I'm not here to criticize anybody's lifestyle. I'm just here to state what God said. God had a particular standard, and God had a particular way in which he distributed the roles. And here, this has been officially negated in the entire world. So the one aspect that was introduced in Eden has been done away with. The dominion will be done away with when it comes to the charter that has been signed with regard to climate change. Because their dominion is transferred from man over the environment to the environment over man. So that has been taken away with. What's the third aspect that must be taken away with? The Sabbath. Because the Sabbath is a symbol of rest in the completed works of Christ. This system is a system where man intercedes on behalf of man and takes over the role which God has, in a spiritual realm, assigned to mankind. Who runs the world? Women. Now, I'm on dangerous ground here, but it's just a fact that women are more and more prominent in politics in the world today. As Theresa May became Britain's Prime Minister Wednesday, the world is one step closer to being run by women. Well, only on the surface, because behind the scenes there are others who actually run the show. May joins German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who leads Europe's largest economy and has worked to unify the continent in the face of a multitude of recent global crises, as a woman governing a major European country. And if Hillary Clinton is elected president in November, 3 of the world's most influential nations would be run by women for the first time. In fact, the 10 toes that the Bible is concerned with will be run by women. Now, there's nothing wrong with a woman running it. There's nothing that suggests that a woman is not as capable as a man. That's not the point. The point is, it is a fulfillment of what the Bible says. So will 3 women run the world? Isaiah 3 verse 12, as for my people, children are their oppressors, and women rule over them. O my people, they which lead thee cause thee to err and destroy the way of thy paths. You know what? Men deserve that the women rule, because men have usurped the position that has been given to them by God. Not to lord it over people, but to rule by compassion and kindness in the image of Christ. Husbands, love your wives, And love is not self-seeking, and it never seeks to harm anyone. And we're living in a planet that is lying in tatters. So God says, let the woman rule. Now, it's very interesting about this lady. Mayday, time for amendment of life. Some changes have to come. The world cannot continue as it has. Why did they vote for Brexit? The Jesuits in Britain, their magazine say, we have a deal, referring to the COP21 deal of the environment, where the environment takes precedent over man. Every single thing that God instituted in Eden is being negated. We're just waiting for the final one. The news media writes, Christians may in particular think that Theresa May's family background, she is the daughter of a vicar, the same as Angela Merkel, will have given her a true understanding of what it is to serve. Church of England incumbents make a huge contribution to the well-being of everyone who lives in their parishes, not just those who attend church or profess the Christian faith. This is the real work of Christ, and it is this that Theresa May grew up witnessing day after day. Theresa May has also set her vision of reform, the success of which depends on the workings of the authoritative parliament that truly represents and serves the people. It is not entirely original. She is repeating the substance of what one of the greatest party chairmen said to a conservative conference at a party and government set out to find a new agenda after de Gaulle vetoed Britain's application to join the European community. She echoes MacLeod when she says,
Okay, we're all out of time, and let's continue this on another day because it's quite interesting. We'll be back on the Investigative Journal tomorrow. Have a good evening and good night.
Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.